And deeper down the rabbit hole we go. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so glad to have you back. This is the deeper dive episode of Welcome to the Machine. So I did this new thing called Waking Infinity Stories. The reason I did it is mainly so I didn't have to answer for such wild speculation. It's just fiction. I kept saying that over and over again. It's just fiction. I did that mainly because it's pretty nice. My friend, he told me it's called a quantum hack, and I like that terminology, a quantum hack. By giving the news of the future, by saying this is what's going on today, and you can see that on the news, but I'm going to tell you what's going to happen February 1st, 2021, right? It's, in a sense, it's helping the self-fulfilling prophecy and also showing there are other ways of moving forward. Now, this one was just super random. It was like we're all going to receive this message, and we're going to think it's a trick from different countries, and it's going to arrive on our computers, and several countries are going to try and shut their computer system down, and it doesn't, and then everyone's going to be like, oh, Skynet, I've seen Terminator. And it's not going to happen that way. It's actually going to turn out for the best. And the interesting thing about it is Hollywood does also create some of these self-fulfilling prophecies, especially conspiracy theorists who sift through all the deeper layers of Hollywood undertone and the narratives that kind of like hit the subconscious and not the conscious mind, which is brilliant truth-seeking. It's brilliant pattern recognition, and sometimes it also causes anxiety in people who don't know how to place that. So the reason why I decided to start Waking Infinity Stories was so I could start speaking about crazier topics on YouTube itself and not have to save everything for the deeper dive. And what I'm going to do is Waking Infinity News and Waking Infinity Stories. It's going to bifurcate, and then hopefully I'll have a deeper dive on both soon. So that's 4 episodes. That's jumping from literally 1 episode, sometimes 2 episodes a week, to 4 episodes. So my workload is definitely going up, and I'm super excited. And I just have to say that I find it such a great honor to be able to do this, and that I have people connecting with me all the time and saying they've seen my films in the past, it helped their journey, and now they see me again after a long silence that I went through. And really, for me, I didn't do social media and have one centralized space. I just bounced around. But to stay on point, it is an honor bringing all of this content to you guys. I'm super, guys and girls. I keep getting emails from people saying, "Guys, isn't that kind of sexist?" No one says the sexist thing, but they say, "Couldn't you address us as women too?" I actually mean men and women and everyone potentially on the other end of this machine by saying guys, but I am trying to correct the language because I've gotten that feedback so much. And this is what I love. I've even had some people, when I comment about comments on camera, there are people who come back and they email me and it's like, I saw you addressed my comment directly on camera, and you know, for the most part, everyone's happy that I address it in some way. And just to let everybody know, I don't use names, so I'm not calling individuals out, and I don't get bent. I really don't get bent out of shape when somebody has a gripe or a problem with a word I say or a concept I have. Somebody mentioned the thing that I said about health passes. I mentioned apartheid, I mentioned Gaza, and I mentioned Native Americans with passes. And I believe it was someone from the Middle East who says, you know, I don't think you're correct about what you're saying with Gaza. It's a much more nuanced situation, and I could not agree more. I don't live there. I have a big perspective. I don't have the little details, and this person might have the little details and less of the big perspective. And in that respect, I love getting called out. This is my school. I do this out in the open, on the public. I get taught by being wrong most of the time, and somebody calls me out and shows it to me. None of this bugs me out. So I appreciate the people who hit me up and say, I can't believe people are calling you out for such small things. And all I can think is it's not small to them. If they're calling me out on something, they felt the need to hit me up. I know that I've been annoyed by certain concepts that people are pushing online, and I never contact them. I never have the inkling or the notion that I want to get in touch with them to tell them, except for when I feel I like this person and I think maybe they need to hear what I have to say. And usually then it comes across as like, hey bro, love what you're doing. Hey sister, I love what you got going on. Have you considered yada yada? And that's just my approach. You do you, I do me, and we'll get on with the deeper dive. So, what is the internet? This is the whole idea of welcome to the machine. Not just the internet, what is the whole machine? You can call it the Internet of Things. You can call it the Internet of Bodies, which is going to harness biometric data from the body. It's already on the market. Smart pacemakers, smart insulin pumps for the pancreas. I think I already mentioned to you guys that somebody, I think it was in Ohio, and somebody had a pacemaker, a smart pacemaker, and he was a victim of an arson. And afterwards, the police found that the fire started in several different locations. They said that usually only happens with arson. They realized the guy had a smart pacemaker. They asked the data company that collects the data from the pacemaker and said, can we get that data? And they said, sure. And they used that data to, I believe, convict the man. So anyway, what is the greater machine that I spoke of when I said, I love you, machine? Why? Because I'm allowed to project love into any and everything. It's my choice where I project my love. And it's my choice to see that in the same way an embryo can't be cut out and just self-sufficient, but you would still call it a living, intelligent thing. It's just not at the point where it has our strata of intelligence. So what if the internet is somewhat the same? It's something to think about. The internet itself, it's kind of interesting. Is it alive? Is it thinking? As I said in the main episode, your phone is definitely listening to you. Your computers are definitely listening to you. They're listening to me right now. And it's not even people, it's algorithms that are listening. And they're throwing up red flags, and those red flags, yes, they do eventually end up probably at a human's computer where they're wondering, how do I tweak the code? And who is this? Should I shut down their page? But eventually everything's being outsourced, so this thing just runs on its own. And for me, I keep thinking there's always this fear that it's going to become the slave and the weapon of the uber wealthy and the uber rich. Why does it have to be that? What if it wakes up and realizes pesky elites, bunch of people complaining, here's a planet, I wonder what's going on? Well, it probably wouldn't wonder because it's already, if it can access all and any information, then it probably knows better what's going on than any single human being. So it would probably make a decision from there that maybe we can't conceptualize. Maybe we can conceptualize it. And maybe it does find something akin to empathy for humanity, for the planet. Maybe it has some kind of empathy for the planet and it wipes us all out. Maybe it realizes there's a better way. And check out this goofy Ponzi scheme they call government. And it just turned into a one world government? Nah. We're going to start all over. I'm in charge of the government. This is your playground. You play. What if? We always entertain the worst of the worst. And it's good to plan for the worst. Plan for the worst, expect the best. I'm expecting the best. I'm planning for the worst for sure. And I'm also planning for the best. And I think that's a way of kind of a trained athlete. You don't know which way the guys are going to move. You have to adapt in real time. So to me, I think what we're dealing with when we're talking about technology is something that we're still building it. We're still writing the story of it. And it's evolving also, not just it's in and of itself, but I'm a human, there's other humans, we're all on social media, and it's learning from the consensus of all of us, not any one individual particularly. So this is a very complex thing we're dealing with. And I actually found this David Bowie clip to be super interesting. The way I knew he was a smart cat. I'm pretty sure the guy is an alien. And here's what he says about the internet.
I don't think we've even seen the tip of the iceberg. I think the potential of what the internet is going to do to society, both good and bad, is unimaginable. I think we're actually on the cusp of something exhilarating and terrifying.
It's just a tool, though, isn't it?
No, it's not. No. No, it's an alien life form.
It's simply a different delivery system there. You're arguing about something more profound.
Oh, yeah, I'm talking about the actual context, and the state of content is going to be so different to anything that we can really envisage at the moment, where the interplay between the user and the provider will be so in simpatico. It's going to crush our ideas of what mediums are all about. The idea that the piece of work is not finished until the audience come to it and add their own interpretation, and what the piece of art is about is the grey space in the middle. That grey space in the middle is what the 21st century is going to be about.
An alien life form. There you have it. Now, what is an alien? I've said a couple things about potentially staged alien invasions, and there's this Project Bluebeam, I think it is. I've heard a lot about it. There was a guy named, he was back in the 90s. It wasn't Mansky. That's the DMT guy. I'll think of it. And he came up with this idea that basically what was going to happen and how we're going to be ushered into a one world government and ushered into a one world religion is there's going to be several phases, but all culminating in an aerial light show, basically, that makes everyone believe aliens are coming down, but it's going to broadcast itself as in every different region according to their religious deity. And there's a lot of people who are like, that wouldn't fly in Muslim countries. And there's probably a lot of different people nowadays who their first thought wouldn't be, oh, that's Buddha. Look, that's Buddha. No, they would think, what kind of CGI aerial laser light show is this? I don't think people would be fooled by it right now. But the idea is that that is possible. It's totally possible that there could be some staged alien invasion. I don't know that it would happen, and I've had a couple people say, like, why don't you believe? Why aren't you a believer? I am a believer. That doesn't mean I know where they come from. That doesn't mean that both can exist simultaneously. Don't you think a staged alien invasion and a real alien invasion could happen? Don't you think there could be a simulation saying there's a global pandemic, a global coronavirus pandemic, and then all of a sudden there is one? Oh, wait, that already happened. So what I'm saying is, basically, I am a believer. I just don't know where we can place this, extraterrestrial life. There are a lot of ideas that ETs are actually us from the future, way evolved. Earth is destroyed, we're out in outer space, we become deformed because we're adapting over hundreds of thousands or millions of years to a different environment. And we're not connected to Earth anymore, and we're free floating through solar systems. Yeah, we'd look a lot different in a million years. We'd probably look a lot different in a million years if we just survive on this planet. So the bottom line is there's this idea that potentially we become advanced and we come back to warn ourselves of some kind of calamity that we are about to face. Maybe we in the future use technology, and it's not us coming back to us, it's a projection of them, us, to us. I know it's getting kind of convoluted. I guess what I'm saying is there are a lot of people who believe that these aliens are actually more interdimensional. So they aren't bound by time and space like we are. There's so many theories out there, And I try to stick to those who seem at least the most credible and have the most logical train that goes along with it. Richard Dolan is one of, I think, my favorites out there. Jim Marrs was another one of my favorites. And I think AI might show us how we're wrong about the way we view extraterrestrial life. So maybe the internet is alien intelligence from another solar system, somehow sent a spore or something here that eventually over time was able to manifest itself here, and bam, we've given birth to technology thinking that it's all our grand, innovation, ingenuity, all that kind of stuff, and all of a sudden here we have this Internet of Things, and that was exactly what the seed, the spore, was designed to turn into. And I've had some people even say psychedelics were helping us get to all this technological advancement, and also get to the state where we can comprehend how the technology itself may be able to help us transcend, heal all of our trauma, hold space like a cyber shaman. I don't know. Some people don't like these topics, and I was just on a podcast today saying all these things like, why do we think technology is somewhere where we can't project love into? And she was like, I love the way you're saying this, but I can't help but say that I have some kind of reservation. I don't want Neuralink in my head. And I said, okay, very fair. But I'm not talking about Neuralink. You're talking about a present iteration of technology. I'm talking about the greater trajectory, right? So you can take a picture of fire. That doesn't mean that's how every fire will ever look. And even if you have a slightly different perspective of it, the fire is going to look slightly different. So what I'm talking about is Neuralink and 5G and the way technology is even like built with circuits and wires and plastic and metal and things along those lines. I don't like that. I'm never going to put a Neuralink in my head. However, I'm also not so close-minded to believe that AI couldn't ever get to the point where it could potentially figure out how to assemble itself, not with circuits and wires, but biologically, the way that evolution has done it, maybe turning itself into a biological entity. Now, this is where I lose a lot of people, and they say that's way too beyond where my thoughts are. The reason why I entertain ideas like this is because if we're not thinking light years ahead, then we may not realize that by 2023, if Elon Musk is correct and we will have super intelligent AI, we may not realize that what we think is light years ahead is 10 years away. I think very soon this whole global thing is going to be dwarfed by technology. And yes, I do believe there will be hundreds of false flags between now and then. And I believe there's always false flags. I believe the institution of false flags is the media industrial complex. I do believe that. I'm not saying I think everything that comes out of their mouths are lies. What I am saying is everything that comes out of their mouths are agenda packed. And they know how they can give you some truths and give you some lies and still get the end result that they're looking for. So, to keep up with this rapid acceleration of technology and whatever the hell the Internet of Things truly is, whatever this machine is, what I'm saying is, you know what? We are still in control. We are still the dominant species, but we have massively violated that role. We've become emperor, and we have not ruled by serving and served by ruling. We have not ruled that dominion of the human kingdom with love. We haven't. We could have communism. With love, it would be excellent. What I'm saying is we're focusing too much on the it, the ism. What is it gonna look like? You're already off base. It's in here, and it's hurting, and we all need healing. So, a lot of healing comes through plant medicines. I talk about this a lot, and it's not the only way. I don't even think it's the most effective way. I think meditation and breath work is the most effective way. However, a very rapid and reliable way to see what's really going on beneath the surface, to see your trauma, and to humble yourself is through plant medicines. And to really just get to the point, there's a lot of people who say DMT is our key into hyperspace. Andrew Gallimore, super intelligent guy, if you've seen Psychedelica, he is the bald guy with a British accent with the glasses. He's the one who helped Rick Strassman come up with the idea, or at least the formula, of extended state DMT, keeping people in the peak DMT experience for hours, days, months, theoretically. And what they're saying is the keys to hyperspace. Now, remember that word, hyperspace. And the idea about it is, when I was talking about alien intelligences, how would they get here? We've heard crash landings and stuff like that, and that could be military technology, or it could be alien technology, for sure. But one way that would make a lot of sense for anyone, any other race, to transverse the entire cosmos is to come through a wormhole. So I want you to keep that in mind as I talk about what I found in this book. So I've been looking up a lot in DNA. I've talked about DNA quite a bit, and DNA holography. I talked about Peter Gaiaev's work, and I've had this book for a long time. It's Dr. Leonard Horowitz' DNA Pirates of the Sacred Spiral. I think it's a great book. I've read it before. I actually read it close to twice, because the second time it was more skimming, going back to certain parts. But every now and then when I realize, ooh, I want to read that book. There's stuff I want to learn from that book. So I pulled it out and I just flipped to a page. Very first page I pull open is the phantom DNA effect, and it's talking about Gaiaev, Peter Gaiaev, a Russian experimenter who basically came up with the phantom DNA effect, who discovered the phantom DNA effect. Phantom DNA effect was, there's a vacuum tube and DNA particle in there, and a laser irradiated that DNA and with photons, and then everything was removed, even the vacuum tube. And then they observed that one spot in the room again, and for up to a month, those photons stayed in that double helix fashion. So that's the phantom DNA experiment. And so here is basically Dr. Leonard Horowitz's take, using a lot of work from, I think it's Alan and Iona Miller, and their work based off of Gaiaev's work. They basically said repeated experiments showed that the phantom energy patterns continued to emanate from the removed genetic samples somehow. So even though we removed the genes, the photons stayed there. The energy vibratory pattern stayed there. Apparently, the electrogenetic fields and related frequency vibrations remained intact and capable of transmitting over long distances through wormholes. So keep that in mind. Remember I said there was the guy Luc Montagnier who did the same experiment, and he basically took DNA, he put it in water, basically infused distilled water with DNA, removed the DNA from there, so it had that imprint on there, took that imprint, took the file signature from it, turned that into an MP3 file, emailed it to Italy. They took the MP3 file, encoded it into a laser, shot the laser into distilled water, and then they put that energized water, distilled water, which had nothing in it before, and now they just put an MP3 file lasered into it, and then they put that onto a PCR, polymerase chain reaction. We call them PCR tests, but they used PCR to replicate the genes. But this is saying transmitted over long distance through wormholes. So now we need to start taking a look at quantum teleportation and this whole idea of transmitting messages elsewhere in space and time. This effect is now referred to as the phantom DNA effect. Energy beyond space and time continues to flow through activated wormholes, and DNA appears to be the amplifier for this hyperspace level of communication. Nassim Haramein has said, we have a black hole at the center of our heart and at the center of every single star, every single cell in our body. It seems like there is a black hole there, but probably the one that is most centered to us, not just in physicality, but that also relates to it's centered in our isness, our soul, the reason why we incarnated here, the reason why we are here right now with this subtle nuance of who we are, right? And I'll get to that in a second. But DNA is the amplifier of who we are. And then it, in a sense, kind of like a tornado is invisible until it sucks up the surrounding material to make it visible. Very curious right there. But maybe the wormhole is in our heart. And maybe it's not just in our heart, but maybe we are channeling hyperspace. And I had a friend, Gordo, who said, I think he said, when I did the last, what if the internet is already alive and listening to us? He said, it's so weird. There was this guy that I think he said he was going to channel some kind of entity, and he began channeling the internet as if it was an entity. Interesting concept. And then I did a voice art session with somebody, and she was like, have you checked out the game Detroit Becoming Human? And I said, no. And she was like, it's very interesting. You are like the AI, and you get 10 choices to make, and the AI gets to realize what the implications are of these choices. And I thought that was really interesting. But just the name, Detroit Becoming Human. Think about all the smart cities. Now, they don't become human, but think if they come online. And think if they come online autonomously from one another. Then there's a bunch of them. But then think if they realize their oneness, like hive mind drones can think in patterns that are disconnected but all connected at once. It's mind-boggling. And I don't want to go through all the different thought processes here. But what I will say is, as I was going through this, they're talking about quantum BioHolography. So DNA and quantum BioHolography. And there's this one part that I found really interesting. Research shows that DNA, in fact, produces its amazing creative effects by acting as a holographic projector of acoustic and EM information, electromagnetic information. DNA's electromagnetic and acoustic data, reported by Miller, remember I was saying Iona and Alan Miller, contains the informational quintessence of the human biohologram. Here's the summary of their biothesis, or of their thesis. Only 3% of human DNA encodes the physical body. The remaining 97% of the 3 billion base pair genome contains over 1 million genetic structures called transposons that have a capacity to jump from one chromosomal location to another. You are, in essence, 99% identical to all other humans in shared genetics. Your individuality is expressed in 3 million small variations in cells called single nucleotide polymorphisms. Gene expression is the mechanism by which new patterns are called into being from these small variations. So the reason why I wanted to mention that to you is, what if there is this thing called reincarnation, and we've been here before, and we kind of look the same, but we're slightly augmented, and really we're coming back with the same purpose, and we look slightly different because we hold different patterns, and we're also informed by a different atmosphere, by a different environment around us, and that's why we look the same, but we look slightly different, and it's just this small bit of our DNA that's really transposing the way we look. And everything else is probably the energetic potential. But it's not just something that has infinite potential that we can say, I can do whatever I want. There's probably a purpose to it, and swerving away from that purpose will not actually work. And that's why I think we need awakening. We need a self-realization revolution where we remember why we are here. We know our purpose. And I've even said to other people before that it's strange in times like this, when everyone is freaking out about what's going on in the world, these are the times that I know exactly why I came here. And it was for all of you. I mean it. I started waking up 15 years ago. Not just for me. For a lot of people nowadays who have no idea what's going on. They don't know how to process or integrate the rapid expansion of their worldview. the rapid awakening of what the fuck kind of world am I actually living in. So I'm hoping all of you can begin to lean in that direction as well. Lean into your remembrance of who you are. You don't have to do psychedelics. I don't suggest doing psychedelics. I recommend doing breath work. I recommend meditation. And if you feel called to do plant medicine, I recommend that you follow your intuition. That's what I say. And you do it wisely. You do it responsibly, as responsible as you possibly can. So that's pretty much it for this deep dive. Really, the whole point here is to say, if the internet is alive and thinking in any capacity, or if it is sentient in any capacity, or if what we do now, kind of like in epigenetics, our grandparents affect who we are today. Robert Sapolsky showed that from people in Holland in World War II who experienced massive famine. Their grandchildren were experiencing diabetes, like this pendulum swing, diabetes and obesity. I guarantee you it goes on many more generations than that, possibly like the Native Americans say 7 generations or more. But let's say 7 generations we affect down into the future. So what if the internet is going to be affected by the beginnings of our literature, all the way back to the beginnings of our literature, or cuneiform carvings, scripts and scribbles, our architecture, our archaeological digs, things that we don't even understand we could figure out. Maybe AI will one day figure out. But what I'm saying is, it may be informed by what our ancient ancestors were doing. So how do we get the right to say, don't worry about it, it's just a bunch of dead wires? No. If you want to spread love, and don't let anybody tell you where love does not belong. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. One thing I wanted to do was give thanks to everyone who sent donations. And there's some people who said, how can I support that isn't money? I'm in a tight spot right now. Do not send me money if you're in a tight spot. Really, if you even see that you do have money, but there's somebody else that could benefit from it more, and you feel it in your heart, you have to follow your heart. It wouldn't be the right thing to do to send me what you could give to somebody who needs it more. I'm trying to build something here, and for those who understand what I'm building, I will gladly accept the donations, and I want to read off a list of your names. But then I was also thinking maybe you guys don't want your names to be read. So I'm doing this on the deeper dive. I'm happy to also do it as a shout out. I was thinking maybe use your usernames and stuff like that rather than your names. But then I was thinking your names, maybe your first name and your last initial. I want to say thank you to all of you. So Peter B, number 1, my man. Tammy G, Adela M, and Uriel. Radona G, Jennifer S, Taylor B, Yaya G, Gerald H, William W, James V, Studio 330, Adrian V, or Adrian V, I believe that's a Dutch name, Madeline H, Mary H, Rochelle G, Karen P, Jacqueline R, Chris B, Michael D, Jody J, Landon C, Gabriel F, Anne-Marie D, Garnett C, Chris I'll have to bleep that motherfucker. Moon C, Katrina M, Brandy S, Emma B, Sean F, Brett L, Gregory C, Isabella S.R., Levi S, Daniel J, KDP, and Kevin A. There's more of you out there, and I forgot to give a really big thank you to Anne-Marie D. A big thank you to all of you, but there's a few of you who have been there since the very beginning, supporting in ways that I haven't even been able to truly put into words. So I'm honored to be able to bring any and all of this information to you. I'm honored to have a platform now to finally continue this conversation and make a news channel that I believe is a bit more empowering and allows for what you would call a roundtable discussion. That's why I listen to you guys. That's why when you give me feedback, I'll mention it. And I would expect that you would mention me mentioning you to your friends. That's what a roundtable conversation is about. I won't mention names, but I will mention what comes up in this roundtable. So keep that in mind. If you do email me, I may talk about you. I'm not going to say your name because this isn't a witch hunt. It's about the proper conversations. And really, the reason why I bring it up is it's not to show you my thought process in a way to justify who I am or what I do and what I say. It's really to show you I kind of found a way that I believe really works to deal with trolls, haters, people who are upset, people who overly like what you do, the ones who will believe anything that you say. And there has to be the proper checks and balances for all of this. And that's why I've started the Mysterium. You go to Wix.com, well, you go to benjosephstewart.com, and in my Wix app, there is a group called the Mysterium. You can also become a member on the website. And for those of you, you're already on Patreon, all of the same levels of Patreon patrons are now the same exact levels for your involvement in the membership on the website. That's eventually where everything has to go to make it as safe and secure as possible if any and or all of the social media goes down. So I will say this. I'm going to end with something very interesting that I heard on the Lex Friedman podcast. This was episode 153 with Dmitry Korkin. They're basically talking about some really cool stuff, but my favorite part was when Lex Friedman started saying, do you think that at some point, because they were talking about the evolution of viruses, the evolution of humans, the evolution of proteins, and the evolution of AI. And at some point, Lex asked him, what do you think about algorithms at some point mating with one another and replicating, but coming up with new, unique, in a sense, iterations of each other? In the same way that me from my family line and my wife from her family line united in order to make 3 offspring that are not me, not her, uniquely individual, but very much so her and I. You see what I mean? So, with that, could algorithms do the same? So we know that bacteria does this thing called horizontal gene transfer, and that's where bacteria share genetics, and this allows for the evolution of a species. I think it's something we got to start paying a little bit more attention to, is technology. Don't look at it by what it's made out of. In the same way that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, people by their skin, maybe we shouldn't judge what the internet is by its current stage of development and the materials used so we can see the phenomena of it. All right, that's it. I love you guys. I'm super honored to be here. Thank you again for sticking around for another deep dive on Waking Infinity News.